Weeds are one of the greatest battles for any homesteader. And if you're like me, you struggle with this every year. We've got 106 acres here. We've got 3 homes, 1 we live in, 2 are rentals. And we have to keep the place looking really nice. We have a big entrance gate that welcomes people in, and we've got roadways that go throughout. All of that needs to be groomed and what you'd expect in a hospitality ranch. Over the years, we've come up here every summer and we've spent 2 to 3 hours just sweating, just pulling weeds and trying to keep it under control, using some sprayers and mostly these gallon jugs of vinegar that we get at Home Depot. It's agricultural vinegar, it's 30% vinegar that we'd put in a hand sprayer and go around and spray, and that does work. You put a little kosher salt and some dishwashing detergent in there, that really makes it stick to the leaves, and it does work, but it's not enough to do the scale that we have here. We've tried everything. We've got different weed trimmers here. You can see some are string lines, some are chopping devices, some are saws, some are even this wire mesh brush thing that you can get on Amazon. Don't buy those, they don't work. They'll overheat your motor. Finally, I got this 65-gallon trailer with a tank, 65-gallon tank on a trailer. I pull behind my ATV with a boom on the back, and I use that 40% vinegar, which I dilute in half into that tank. That big tote over there is a 275-gallon tote. Today, I'm gonna show you the things that work, what doesn't work, and my plan for controlling weeds year after year with very little manpower and actually a lot less effort. Before we get into me showing you how I load the sprayer and use it, I wanna jump into the different products, what the costs are, comparative costs, and which ones work, which ones don't in certain areas and why. This is a rendering of our homestead. Currently, we have this little terrace up here, and the backyard here is just gravel. It's pea gravel. And all this down here is still kind of wild. So my plan is to improve this by adding these terraces. So I'll be sharing with you the boulder walls, the crops as we plant them, the orchard. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this right now is all this ties into the weed experience that I've learned over the last 7 years up here. Why we would want to choose different products for different areas. After we first built this place back in 2018 and started spending a little bit of time here, we very quickly realized that some of the imported dirt that the builder used to terrace this off was just full of, all different types of thistle, Russian thistle, bull thistle. We had weeds of every type and color, and we would come up here this is before we lived here full time, weeds everywhere, total nightmare. So we realized very quickly, if you don't control the weeds, they're going to control you through several months of the year. And it was just hundreds of pounds of weeds. When we first purchased Treehouse, we let that go for a summer. We came up here and it looked like an abandoned house, weeds everywhere. I spent hours and hours, hundreds of pounds of weeds. It was a nightmare. I said, never again. So I went to Home Depot. I bought this Ground Clear, which has some pretty toxic stuff in there. This stuff works for an entire year. It's really designed for driveways, hardscape, anywhere where you're not planting. If you get this too close to your trees, it'll kill them. If you want to plant something anywhere near where you're spraying this stuff, even months down the road, it's not going to grow. This stuff is scorched earth, absolute death for everything in the ground. And it works. And we weren't planning on growing any food, so I was spraying this. I had a backpack sprayer. I'd walk around and spray this, and it was very effective at just eliminating the weeds. So we've got it under control. The problem is I don't like spraying this stuff. It's got glyphosate and some other chemical I don't recall offhand. Pretty toxic stuff. So I started looking at vinegar. And the vinegar, if you breathe it, it's probably not the best for your lungs, but it's not going to kill you. It cycles out of your system really quick. It's not like a permanent chemical that could get in and like microplastics or other really toxic biohazards. This isn't it. And we try to spray when it's not windy, but it's almost always windy up here. So I tried wearing a respirator with this stuff, and that was probably a smart thing. Covered up, gloves, everything, but I just wasn't really comfortable using this at scale, especially as we expanded and built the big gate down there in the road. There was so much chemical required. I was looking for an alternative. So I went and tried out this 30% vinegar. I would put it in a backpack sprayer. I would dilute it half and half. So you're really 30% concentrate divided in half, 15%. This worked okay. We'd also add the salt and some dishwashing soap so it sticks to the weeds and it stays on there long enough for it to kill it. Pretty effective. In fact, this was almost more effective on certain types of weeds, more effective than this one. it's really expensive. As you can see, it's, $21, $22 with tax. So I went online to this Blend Magic and ended up buying this giant tote, which I'm going to show you in the video coming up here. 40% vinegar. I dilute this in half, and it's still 5% stronger than the gallon jugs. Gallon jugs were 30%, divided in half is 15. This is 40% divided in half is 20. A little bit stronger, and the numbers, as I'll show you coming up here, really pencil out. I'm going to show you a comparative chart of all these chemicals. Here's the actual price. So here's on their website today, $28.99, and a year ago when I bought it, $28.99. I thought, I need to buy this in bulk because at $20 a gallon and I'm putting 3 gallons in just to do little sections. I mean, this is getting really expensive. So I said, let me do some cost comparison. And for a 275 gallon tote of 40% vinegar, so it's a lot of volume, and it's also twice as, or it's 5% stronger than what I had. $28.99 was the total. Because they're an online store, I didn't pay any tax, and they included shipping. It comes, on a truck. I had to go pick it up in my truck and forklift it on. But in order to spray that effectively, you need to spray it in a large volume. And that little backpack walking around, it's impossible for one person to cover enough of the sides of the roads and all around in the parking areas where it comes up, weeds come up through the gravel. So I needed a way to disperse this, at a large volume. So I ended up buying this trailer from Fimco, 65 gallons. I went to their website today to get this screenshot, and it turns out it's actually cheaper today than when I bought it about a year ago. So it cost me $169 to get it shipped here, and of course you have to assemble it. So I'm just under $1,500 one time for the sprayer, and the key is to really clean it really well to make sure that none of your nozzles get clogged. When you're putting salt and vinegar in this thing, it'll totally wreck your motor and everything else if you leave it in there more than a couple of days. So it's a little bit more effort to prepare this and to clean it afterwards and put it away and store it. It takes up room in your barn, all of that, but it's infinitely easier than walking around with a backpack on and having to keep refilling that thing. So I'm very happy. This is my second year. I've used it about 3 or 4 times since I bought it, and it's a winner. So let's talk about the effectiveness. The ortho, when I was spraying around the house, so I'd be spraying, all of these areas. Again, this is a rendering, but all around the house, it works very well. And I had to keep it away from the trees because it will get in the ground and it'll soak over there. It says it's rain ready in 1 hour, but I don't know about that. I'd probably give it, I wouldn't do it if rain was in the forecast. And you also don't want to do it in the wind because you're going to be breathing it and it's going to blow over and it's going to get in all your trees and everything else. So early morning, calm weather, no rain in the forecast, and you just spray it liberally around and it works very well. I would not do that anywhere near this terrace or this terrace because I don't want that stuff anywhere near. In fact, I don't want it anywhere on our homestead because it's too toxic. We've got dogs, we've got, we don't have animals yet other than our dogs. We get a lot of deer coming in here and eating. I just don't want that toxic chemical. So for everything you see in this photo, this entire area, it's going to be vinegar. But now after having used the vinegar and how incredibly corrosive it is to all my equipment, I may opt to use the ortho or something similar around this gate. You can see this image was taken right after we finished building it. So it's nice and clean. There's no weeds around here anywhere, but all up and down this area here and up and down this road, all over here on the sides. And then just, these areas all along here. I don't need anything to grow there. I'm never going to plant anything edible down here. And it might be a lot cheaper and easier just to come down on a very calm, non-windy morning, go out here and just spray this whole area and forget about it. And the reason why I'm saying this is because we get Russian thistle down here on this lower part of the land. We have a lot different species, really invasive species. Bull thistle, which the county charges us if we don't remove it. It comes up everywhere about this time of year. It's it's April right now where we speak, but around July, August, it'll be exploding everywhere. So I really need to keep this at bay. Now for the areas you see down here, over here, these areas, and up and down along the side of the road, of M Road, I'm going to use my mower, my Kubota skid cutter that I'll show you here in the rest of the video. So I've got all these different methods of, we've got weed eaters, we've got the different chemicals, we've got the mower. And to keep everything looking groomed, that's what it requires, a small arsenal of yearly attack on these weeds to keep everything at bay. Here's a cost analysis of the different chemicals. So up here is a Home Depot jugs. They're 1 gallon jugs, 30% vinegar. Here is the 40% vinegar in a Tote, 275 gallons. And here is the Ortho Ground Clear. This is a 2 gallon jug, but it dilutes completely differently. You get 10, almost 11 gallons out of a 2 gallon jug of this. So 11 gallons versus here, you're 50-50. So you get 2 gallons for every gallon you put in. So it really changes the numbers, but you can see that buying the Home Depot, aside from the fact that you have to drive up there and fill up an entire cart full of these things for it to be effective at this scale, you're going there very often and you're getting all of these jugs. Then you have all of the waste of those jugs to throw away. And the cost for applying three times a year. So I fill this 65 gallon jug tank with a sprayer 3 times a year at least. And it's 30 gallons of chemical or 30 gallons of vinegar, 30 gallons of water for a total of 60. I never go all the way to 65 gallons. So this is a 3-year cost analysis. Annually, applying 3 times a year, so 3 times filling up that 65 gallon jug, half and half vinegar and water, it cost me almost $2,000 a year for a total of almost $6,000 for a 3-year period of time. With the Tote, it cost me a big upfront cost, right? Because I'm buying it all at once, but it's $28.99 for the Tote. And then years 2 and 3 is $0, right? Because I'm buying it all up front. So significantly less. And it's a 40% as opposed to a 30%. So stronger mix, less money over a 3-year period of time, significantly so. And then for the Ortho, though, for a 3-year period of time, it only cost me $324 a year. I only have to apply it once a year, so a lot less work. And it's $971 over a 3-year period of time. And you can see down here, the gray is the jugs. The vinegar Tote is a big one-time, and then the rest of the 2 years is no cost, as opposed to the jugs here we've got that cost, every year, almost $2,000 a year. And then with the Ortho, we only have $324 a year. So where I'm going with this is I think we're going to divide up the chemicals. As much as I don't like to use harsh chemicals, considering the amount of effort and our limited manpower, I think this really makes sense for me to go out full hazmat gear. I'm going to have a respirator on because I'm super paranoid about getting this stuff in my system. But I mean, considering what it does, one-time application, spraying in that gravel along the road there, if the weeds come up through that gravel, you can't mow them. You can't use a weed eater because it just throws rocks everywhere, including on you, which hurts really bad. And you'll never really effectively kill it. I mean, you can get it to brown a little bit, but I mean, once it comes through, it's kind of a nightmare. So if I could spray early, before they emerge and before they really take over, this is probably the best way to achieve the goal of this basically zero weed road gate area. But for around the houses where we have guests, where we have people coming in, where we're growing our food, where we're spending all of our time, I think that the Tote for the vinegar makes a lot of sense. So before I made this video, I really wasn't sure. That's why I like to make these videos, because it really helps me sort of process this in my mind, and I'm doing the research for you guys, but also for myself, and it helps me think this through. So we're basically going to be using a combination of the 40% vinegar Tote and the Ortho Ground Clear for the roads. When you walk to a public area or you look at a campus at your university or wherever, any public place, I don't care if it's a Disneyland or a shopping center or whatever, the cost to keep that landscape looking like that and the amount of manpower, the tools, chemicals, it's significant. And so I'm kind of learning this. It hit me like a ton of bricks a year ago when my wife and I were pulling Russian thistle all the way down M Road. M Road is a very long road that we built recently so that we could bring guests more directly into our property rather than having them go around through 4 other ranches on this long convoluted route. We built a new road coming up from the lower end of our property, much easier for guests to come in. That turned into building the gate, and then it turned into all this maintenance that's involved in maintaining this road. It's down in the lower part of the property. It's it gets a lot of weeds. This hit me like a ton of bricks. And last year, when we were out there spending hours and hours pulling weeds and trying to cut them and spray them and everything else, I realized I've got to spend a significant amount of my time this year figuring out a plan so that next year I don't have to deal with this. Now let's jump into the video where I'll just show you how I'm applying this stuff and, the joy of land ownership. Gone around with a weed eater and mowed around, but it's difficult with the rocks everywhere. You can't really get behind in there very well with the weed eater. So we're going to be using my tow-along tank, and we're going to spray up and down the roads with the boom and around our rental, just everywhere where we don't want this to explode as it has in the past. It's really not nice when you have Russian thistle up to your knees. It's hundreds of pounds of weeds that have to be dealt with, and it's like rope, so the weed eaters don't cut it. So we've learned that you have to get it before it gets to that size. Also, on some of our flatland down below, I've gone over with my bucket while the grass was still very short, and before we get all the bull thistle growing up, which the county is, says is a noxious weed, we have to get rid of that. So I went and got all the boulders and stumps out, because when it gets tall, you can't see those things, and if I use my mower, it will destroy it. This terrain is like Mars, and we have one natural resource that is more plentiful than any other, and that is rocks and boulders. We're not quite to the point of needing the mower yet, but it's actually a skid cutter. You can see this Kubota skid cutter I'll put in front of my Kubota compact track loader. So the trick here is to keep the weeds at bay around the main entrance gate, anywhere where the guests are going to interact, around the rentals, and then of course around our homestead here. We don't want weeds getting out of control. It's something that if you maintain them when they're starting to sprout, or even pre-emergent, I never get around to pre-emergent, but that's when they're most vulnerable and weakest, and you can get the most bang for your buck out of your vinegar. All right, well, let's go ahead and fill the tank up and we'll start spraying. Okay, after much fucking around, I got a wire to that battery. It's connected back to here. I had to take all this apart, couldn't find the short. Turns out it was a fuse here. Cut the fuse out. Now when I release the pressure here, it will turn on. This is a cam lock tote valve here. You have to lift up this little yellow thing to get it to turn. I couldn't get it to turn, so I just kind of rocked it back and forth real slow, just push it all at once so you could break it, and then you're just gonna have everything spill out on your shop floor. So just very slow rocking it back and forth, and it finally opened. Now I'm gonna open this, and we should have flow up here now. Better setup here. See if we have any pressure. Oh yeah, markedly better. About 3 feet off the ground. Little hack there. The older, wiser me got a hold of myself and said, let's level this thing out. So put a piece of railroad tie into there and backed it downhill. The slope's this way. So now we're nice and level. You can see we're about 20, a little over 15 gallons right now. I need to be right there. So that twisted a little bit, caused that to leak. Got in a cut on my hand, burns like crazy. You can see there will never be any weeds growing right there. And that's why I didn't like this in the shop. So I'm glad I got it outside before that happened. It was just this twisting with the hose twisting this way, loosen this. Not a big deal, nothing's broken, just needed to retighten it. My genius side got the better of me, and I took the damn handle off. I'm just gonna wedge this in here a little bit, and that way I can go do something, namely wash my hands, all this vinegar, while that is filling up. We're right at the 30-gallon mark right there. So go ahead and turn this valve off. Closes like this. That little thing locks it down. go. One thing that trips people up the first time they use this vinegar is that they spray in the evening or on an overcast day and they think the product doesn't work. The sun is doing part of the job here and it amplifies the burn. Essentially what you're doing is you're roasting the weeds with the chemicals, the acidity of the vinegar. So if you had inconsistent results using agricultural vinegar in the past, check the timing before you blame the product. Hot, dry sun with no wind is your target window. That one adjustment alone may change your results. If this content is resonating with you, consider subscribing. We spend a lot of time talking about our off-grid ranch and how we maintain these rental properties, so we'd love to have you along for the ride. Let me go over my formula for mixing. You know it's 50% vinegar, 50% water, but I also add about a cup of salt, but I don't just pour it straight in because it'll get down in the bottom and it'll fill up my little screen, my hose that pulls the liquid in and clog it up. So I mix it in a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket. I'll stir it in there and let it dissolve first. And then I pour that brine into the tank. I also put a couple of teaspoons of Dawn dishwashing liquid in there. And then just as I drive the ATV down to the first place that I spray, it sloshes around in there and mixes everything. One key point that I touched on in the beginning of the video is using weed eaters to knock everything down before you spray it. I usually go out probably about a week before I'm gonna go spray and take my variety of weed eaters and try and take everything down to as low to the ground as possible. That also opens them up to getting the chemicals soaking into the sort of open severed end of the weed, especially on things like bull thistle. They're kind of hollow inside and it's good to get the spray down in there. It sends a shock down into the roots and it can help slow them down next season as well. One other weed that I didn't mention that we have a ton of here is sage, and this is what they call rabbit brush. And it's got this real woodsy stalk to it. It's almost like a little tree or a bush. And it starts out kind of soft and easy to take down, but once it gets taller, it gets so bad that a regular weed eater isn't going to do anything. So I have to use this Milwaukee that I bought with the handlebars on it. It's a pretty powerful machine, and I can put this cutting blade on it. It's like a little saw. It's got really sharp little edges. And if I hit the rocks that are buried down in there, it dulls them. So I always bring an extra blade, and then I'll take the dull one back and sharpen it and just kind of keep recycling them around. Now this area is down, this is the flat area that we just get completely buried in weeds, including this bull thistle with these purple flowers. Those are really noxious. The county will charge me if I don't take them down myself. They'll come out and spray them. Now I've got the skid cutter. This video was actually from a year ago before I had the skid cutter. And I was just taking them down as per my responsibility as a landowner in Iron County. But yeah, all of this area I'll hit with a skid cutter. And as I said earlier, I leveled all of that up and down the side of M Road here and took out any stumps and boulders or metal pipes or anything so I don't damage my skid cutter. Now here's an older video of me frustrated before I bought the skid cutter and what led to its purchase. Okay, so this is the current situation. I'm sitting here running the weed whackers up and down M Road here. I'll do a first person view of that in a minute so you can see what I'm struggling with. This is called Russian thistle. Just show you how tempting it is. You see how that's one big piece? I can get down in there, pull that whole sucker out. Look at that. But I tell you what, as tempting as it is to want to just pull them, you can't let yourself get sucked into that. Look at the size of this monster. I don't even know this is a different breed. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you're going to be tempted to go get one of these wire things off of Amazon. You know, they seem like they work really well. In fact, I was convinced. The problem is that I tried this on 3 different weed eaters. One Ryobi, one Milwaukee, and another one was a random brand that I bought locally a couple of years ago. This would run for about a minute or so and then it would overheat the motor. It's just too heavy. And when you lower it down into the weeds, when it's got full power, yeah, it absolutely decimates them. So I can see why people would say these are great because they rip and shred everything. They will also rip and shred your weed eater motor and your batteries. Now, if you have a gas-powered weed eater, I think this might be really good because once you get the RPMs up and this thing, as long as your engine's powerful enough to spin it and keep spinning it, it's incredibly effective. It just destroys everything. And you don't have to keep smashing it on the ground to get more of your line to come out like on the traditional line weed eaters. So it's really durable. It's just the weight of it. So if you have a strong enough machine, this might be a real gem. If you like the heavy equipment stuff, I'll be making a full video on the skid cutter on the Kubota 97-2 as soon as the weeds and grass get tall enough down on M Road. But in the meantime, if you want to see me compare my backhoe to the Kubota compact track loader, check that video out right here.